Speaking about the trenches, Corey, Brad King says, where's the offensive line? Alex Atkins has guys that have been in the program with him for years, and these new highly brought-in portal guys, but none of them not only can not block, but can't understand his scheme. That was like doubly frustrating, right? When you see guys that have been here for so long with like puzzled expressions after a negative play, kind of like, I thought it was you. I thought it was you.
Yeah.
At least like the redeeming aspect of all this, you would think, is at the very least, they know everything inside and out of like blocking assignments. Maybe they're not physically gifted enough to pull as gracefully as Dylan Gibbons or Dimitri Emmanuel. But you've been here so friggin' long that you should be able to play maybe just a tick faster than the guy in front of you because you know where you're supposed to go and where you're supposed to place your hand and what your first step needs to be. But they don't even have that down, which is just damning.
Yeah, look, man, he is in the he is definitely on the hot seat. There's no doubt about it. But not just because it's not reactionary. Again, I know they were 13-0 last year. This is an absolute abject failure where everybody's position is up for grabs, and that's what's so concerning. Is it's the older guys that he's had for 5 years that are doing it, and he hasn't had anybody break through. Like, he would rather play one of these 24-year-olds that's injured or slightly injured or banged up, because they're all banged up, than some second-year guy that either wasn't good enough to get here, they shouldn't have brought him here, they evaluated poorly on the front end, or they've developed him poorly on the back end. But he would rather play 23, 24-year-old guys that have had multiple surgeries and have played a ton of football and just aren't themselves, clearly, than any of the young guys. And so it goes to the very heart of the development. Who's getting developed? This is real. Like Aslan, who have they played? They've played early a little bit, right? And then they played Otto.
Estes too, if you want to count him, but he was class of 21, so I don't think that's really young.
Yeah, and he couldn't break through at all last year, even when they had some struggles, and they had to go get 2 more guards out of the portal because they didn't believe in the guys they had on the roster. And it's like, okay, man, well, at some point, it's not whoever's evaluating these guys in the portal. It's the developing of the guys that have been here for 2 or 3 years. Are they just not getting developed? Are they just not getting developed? And I think when you're averaging 58 rushing yards per game and you have one of the worst offenses in the country, save for UCLA, it is the worst, at least at this level, you can absolutely say they're not getting developed, and it is a huge issue.
All right, so not going to count 2020 against him because, again, just not the season, but recruiting. You got hired in December, and then it is what it is with the early signing period, which was like what, the first? Maybe that was the first early signing period, 2020, where they either that or 19 was the first one. So first year on campus, they get Robert Scott, they get Thomas Schrader. I think Thomas Schrader either medical DQ'd or transferred out. Robert Scott he'd give you like one game every month, seemingly. His body's just not responding well to the rigors of this sport at this level. Zane Herring, who's now at USF doing all right. Lloyd Willis panned out, didn't work out. That was your first season here on campus. You go to
like you said, you can give him a break.
Yeah. Then you go to 21. You get Rod Orr and Bryson Estes. Orr leaves, Estes hanging on by a thread. Then you go to this 22, and this is where you're like, oh boy. Armella early, Daughtry Richardson gone, Quayshawn Sapp gone, Antavius Woody gone, Kania Charlton gone. I mean, you brought in Kane Lyles as a transfer, but we don't want to go down that road. I mean, just they did not really hit on anybody in that class, other than maybe Jalen Early at some point. And then last year you get Lucas Simmons, who doesn't seem to be any closer than he was a year ago to getting on the field, and Andre Otto, who might be a piece for it.
Yeah,
that's a
well, again, I think the damning part is that they feel they have to keep going to the portal. And it's like, well, if you were developing, it's not like those guys were one-star recruits that they wrestled away from FAU and UTEP. Like, some of those guys were 3-4-star guys, and all over the country there are 4-star and 3-star linemen that are doing better than this. And you have to feel the need to go into the portal every year because the guys you brought in, you have not been able to develop. So again, maybe they're just not good. That's probably the likelihood, right? They're just maybe not good enough to play here. But then again, then you screwed up on the evaluation part. And then if they are good enough, if they can go somewhere else and even be average at USF or, sort of good somewhere else, if they're still in football, well, then you screwed up on the developmental end. But either way, which of these guys has gotten better? Robert Scott is a tough one because he had to play too early. So did Maurice and Darius, by the way. And it's just a really hard sport. It's a grueling sport. I don't know that there's been a lineman that's played more snaps in the country the last 5 years than Maurice Smith. So that's a lot of wear and tear, man. So I'm not blaming them for maybe regressing, or even Atkins for them regressing that much, because their bodies just might beat up. I'm blaming him for not having any options other than the dudes that have been here for half a decade, even when it's this bad.
Zane Herring right now is grading out at 50.4 at USF. Bless Harris is grading out at 56.2 at TCU. He graded out at 72.9 last year at Florida State. So, like, even the guys that have left you and have landed elsewhere, according to PFF, might not be shining bright either. So, I guess that I don't know how much if that adds or helps out to the resume, because like, all right, you let these guys leave and they didn't work out, so at least you didn't miss on them. But it's like, all right, well, those are two other guys that you try to develop. I think Zane was kind of a Taggart recruiting holdover that they held on to, but yeah, it's bizarre. The regression is the bigger concern to me, Corey. I know you're talking about just there's no other options other than what you have. Because, Alex Axon's got asked about, like, what do you say to do you talk to a guy like Maurice when he has bad snaps? It's like, yeah, but what do you say to him? You're still going to be my starting center. I've got no other option. Like, you're.
Well, that's not what Alex said. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It sounded like you were saying that's what Alex said to us.
No. But asking him that question, he's well aware of the mistakes that are going on, but he's trotting out the guys that he continually thinks, for whatever reason, the best five at that moment. And it is that moment because there's guys constantly coming in and out. But to me, it's just the regression. Like, how, I don't know, maybe you could say that Maurice hasn't gotten anywhere, but it feels like Maurice is almost taking a step back. It feels like Darius has taken a step back. I don't know if we can really say that for Jeremiah Byers because he's been banged up, but I was, hoping maybe he could take a step forward. But that was my one mulligan when we did our preseason capsule, when we talked about some things that maybe might not work out as well as we thought it was. I'm like, maybe Jeremiah Byers will be the weak link of this offensive line and that'll hold them back, but I'm not going to blame him for how this whole offensive line is. But that's the bummer, man. It hasn't been any progression. The regression has been the biggest bugaboo for me, rather than not being able to develop Julian Armella by now, which is still